Do you love sweet pickles, but you think it's too much work or maybe too much sugar? Well, stick around and I'm going to show you how to make some delicious homemade sweet pickles just like Grandma did with less sugar, and really it's easy. So stick around. Welcome to the Satisfying Eats cooking channel, and today we're going to make one of my favorites, homemade sweet pickles. I grew up making, actually not making, my dad making sweet pickles, and my mother-in-law made the best sweet pickles, and my grandmother and my mother just came for a visit from Georgia, and my sweet aunt Wanda sent me some pickles. And I just have to make some. There's no way these are gonna last a long time, so I need to make my own pickles. And when I looked at the steps, it's really not that hard. It's just you have to plan your steps in advance. So stick around and I'll show you how to make sweet pickles, lower carb sweet pickles, because I'm actually gonna use stevia and some of our honey from our bees. Okay, so let's get started making our sweet pickles. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm basically following the recipe on the back of Miss Wage's pickling lime. I'm doing about a third of the recipe because I only have 2.5 pounds of cucumbers that I got from the peanut festival this weekend, and I also got some peanuts that I cooked in the Instapot, and I thought I need to make some pickles. I love sweet pickles. My grandmother actually came, and my mother this weekend, and brought me some pickles, sweet pickles that my Aunt Wanda made, and they're so good. They're twangy, they're sweet, they're crunchy, and that's what kind of pickles I want to make. So this is my first attempt at making pickles. I've seen my dad do it many times, but it's a whole nother ball game when you're doing it yourself. So hopefully I'll simplify the recipe so that you realize that you can make them too. So I'm going to start off first with the pickling lime. So I'm going to dissolve a third of a cup of the pickling lime in 2.5 quarts of water. I'm going to get a third of a cup. Ooh, it's kind of powdery. And pickling lime is pretty neat. We actually saw a video that we want to preserve our eggs, our fresh eggs that are we have extra in pickling lime, but that'll be another video. So I have 1/3 of a cup of pickling lime, and I'm going to add 2.5 quarts of water. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if this bowl is going to be big enough. This is a test. So you may see the bowl change midway through this process. If so, just ignore it. Like I said, this is a trial run, a test. So that's 2.5 quarts, and I'm just gonna whisk it together. And I'm gonna let that sit as I get my pickles sliced up. So I'm just gonna put this out of my way. It's gonna be waiting on me right there. Okay, so let's start with the pickles. These are small, I guess, pickling cucumbers. The larger ones are not recommended, but I guess you could if you scrape the seeds out. I guess that's the unpleasant part of the larger cucumbers, but my dad used to slice them real thin. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to half the cucumbers, and then I'm going to quarter them, because that's how my Aunt Wanda did it. And I just like being able to pick up a pickle and eat it because it's so good. And I'm just going to put them, I'm not going to use another bowl. I'm just going to put them straight into the pickling solution. And I've already washed these, they're drained, so they're ready to go. Let's just get these sliced up. So pick the lime pickles, which is why most people don't bother to do them. It's becoming a lost art because people look at the directions thinking, oh, it takes too long, it's too hard, too complicated. But really, it's not. You just have to be ready with your ingredients. You got to have the right ingredients on hand, and just get it done. So this is 2.5 pounds of cucumbers, as I stated. So this is kind of a small batch, but I think that's another reason people kind of get intimidated. They're thinking 7 pounds of cucumbers, that's a lot, which it really is not. But if you do it in a smaller batch like I'm doing, that will make it more doable. So I'm learning. Oh, I've got 3 more cucumbers, so bear with me. So I've really enjoyed starting to do some more homesteading recipes. We made mozzarella cheese last week from raw cow's milk, and it was so good. I think I kind of goofed up a little bit at the end. I didn't heat the water up enough at the end when you are trying to melt the curds back, but it still tasted great. We made a homemade fathead pizza that night using the cheese, and it was wonderful. My grandmother and my mother, they loved it, and they're not necessarily grain-free and low-carb. Actually, they're not at all. So when they come here, I try to convert them. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to come back here and make sure the lime, and you can see it's kind of white, so the water is white with the lime and the cucumbers. So all I'm going to do next, I'm just going to cover it, and every so often, so before I go to bed tonight, I'll open it up and I'll stir it. Say around 8 or 10 o'clock in the morning, I'll be ready for the next step. So stick around and I'll see you in about 18 hours for the next step. Also yesterday, I said that you're supposed to stir the pickles and the lime a few times. Well, I discovered if you use this bowl with a lid, you can just shake it and you'll see the white from the lime. So get a little workout. Okay, so let's open the lid and let's rinse off this lime because we don't want lime pickles, we want sweet pickles. So I'm just going to pour in a colander here. And the directions say to rinse it 3 times, but because we're doing such a small batch, I'm just going to rinse it under the cool water until I think it's all rinsed off. Maybe a few minutes, and I can tell they're crispy. It's weird. Oh wow. The texture is hard. Magic happened. Yeah, wow. I did not expect that. That is that's awesome. These are going to be sweet pickles, but remember I'm going to make them with honey and stevia instead of all the sugar. And technically you don't even need to use sugar for preservation of the pickles. Now some recipes you need sugar because it helps, like in a jelly, for it to thicken with the pectin, but for pickles, there's the vinegar is what's going to preserve the pickles. Okay. I'm thinking we're getting close. So I've probably been doing this a minute or 2 minutes. So we're getting all the lime, and the pickles are really, I'm amazed. I don't remember this step or touching the pickles when Daddy was doing it years ago. So, here Connor, you want to touch one of these pickles and see how hard it is? So I've got my son Connor here.
I'm going to taste one?
No, you're not going to taste it, but look.
It's not very hard.
But does it feel like a cucumber?
Smells like a cucumber.
It does smell like a cucumber, so maybe that means I got the lime off of it. So, okay, I know you can't really tell right now, but if I was, it's crunchy. How did it do that? The magic of lime. Cooking is nothing but science. So, yeah, this is just cool. I never expected the texture to become like that, but that's what makes these sweet pickles so good. Okay, so the next step, I'm gonna rinse out my bowl here. And we're to soak our cucumbers 3 hours in ice cold water. Now, if you make a big batch, it's not going to fit in your refrigerator. But I am going to actually put ice. I just got out of my refrigerator, and I've got some water from my refrigerator, and I'm just going to fill it back up. You want to make sure that the pickles are covered with water and ice. And because I have the space in my refrigerator, I'm actually going to put them in the refrigerator because this is more of the process to make sure they're crispy, sweet pickles, not soggy pickles. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of move them around. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. This is going to be so good. My rinsed pickles, so there's now no lime on them, but they are soaking in some ice cold water. I'm going to put the lid on them, and I'm going to put them in the refrigerator for 3 hours. Okay, so let's get our brine started. I'm going to start with 2.5 cups of vinegar. Now you could use apple cider vinegar. I wish I had apple cider vinegar, but I just used what I had on hand. I had a lot of white vinegar, and that's what's going to preserve your pickles. So you don't alter that amount, even though we're altering the sugar, but you have to have the vinegar or your pickles were going to go bad. And next, I am going to add a heaping teaspoon of the pickling spices. And these are just some I bought. Honestly, I was going to make it, and I did have some of the spices here, but this is cinnamon, allspice, mustard seed, coriander, bay leaves, ginger, chilies, cloves, black pepper, mace, and cardamom. I have some of these, but I forgot to get all the individual ones, so I'm just going to use what I have on hand to make it. And next, I'm going to add some of our honey. This is a cup of honey from our bees, and that's going to contribute to the sweetness. Now, for y'all who have followed me for a while, you know I've been blogging for about 7 years, a little over 7 years actually, and I use stevia as my primary sweetener. But I wanted to use honey because you cannot sweeten this recipe completely with honey, or they will be bitter sweet pickles, and that doesn't sound very good. So I'm going to use a teaspoon of stevia, and I'm using Stevia Select right now. You may can use another brand, but the amounts will vary because every stevia is a different sweetness, different bitterness, and so you kind of have to find that sweet spot. Okay, so let's get our stevia. And so I'm just going to get a teaspoon. Oh, it's kind of powdery. But I think with a teaspoon of stevia and that 1 cup of honey, I'm trying to see if that will replace the 2.5 cups of sugar that the traditional recipe calls for. Okay. And then I'm also going to add some salt. Salt is actually going to enhance the sweetness, and it's not really to preserve. You know, some recipes you need salt preserves, but this is just a small amount to help enhance the flavor of the pickles and the sweetness. So I'm just going to use some kosher salt, and I'm going to use a teaspoon. Okay. So I've got this all mixed up, and I'm not going to heat it up right now. I'm just going to cover it, and I'm going to wait for 3 hours and let my pickles do their magic in the refrigerator in the ice water, and then I'm going to drain the pickles and start the canning process. Okay, so the time has come for our next step, and that is to drain the icy cucumbers. So these have been in the refrigerator for 3 hours, ice water, very cold, very crunchy, crispy. These are going to be so good. So let me drain the water off. And that also helps get the lime, any lime off as well. And if you have any of the ice left, of course, remove it. So I've got all my ice out. I've got some pickles here. So I'm just going to pour the pickles back into my container. And I'm going to pour the pickling spices and the vinegar over the cucumbers. Okay? And I'm just going to cover them back with the lid. And you're going to put them in the refrigerator again for 5 to 6 hours or overnight. And because of the timing, we're going to do it overnight. So I'll meet you back in the morning and we're finally gonna can these pickles. Okay, it's day 3 and it's been 18 hours since I started soaking the cucumbers in the pickling solution in the refrigerator. So next we're gonna drain it off, boil up the brine and pour it and finally make the pickles. Okay, so I just took the pickles out of the refrigerator and they've been soaking in the brine. It's supposed to be 5 hours to overnight. Well, it ended up being about 20 hours. We actually have a hurricane coming outside, so I've had to wait till the boys went to watch their movie and the baby took her nap, so hopefully we'll be uninterrupted. So let's get started by draining the pickles and separating the brine, and we're going to put the brine back on the stove and reduce it for 30 minutes. And I'm pouring it into a pot that I'm going to use. So good. Okay. So let's just turn the heat on, get it to a boil, and then we'll simmer it down for about 25 or 30 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to get my jars out. I actually sanitized and cleaned them and heated them in the dishwasher. My dad used to do that, so we didn't have to do that extra step. If we were running a load of dishes in the dishwasher, we just threw the jars in there, and when they were ready, of course, they're very hot and very clean. So I'm going to go grab my jars out of the dishwasher and start packing the pickles into the jars. Okay, so I've got my jars out of the dishwasher. They're nice, hot, and sterilized. I've got some pint jars. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start taking the cucumbers and I'm going to start packing them in these jars. Some of the recipes or methods, people would cook the pickles and then they would take the hot pickles and the hot brine and trying to put them in the jar, and just that didn't sound like the best idea to me. I don't want to be dealing with trying to put hot pickles and stacking them. So we're just going to pour the hot brine over, and that's going to make it a little safety, make it a little safer. So we're going to pack these in. So I'm going to come back and report in a week. We're going to open them up and see how great they are. If they didn't turn out, they need more sweetness next time, but this is my experiment. And this summer, we're definitely going to plant some cucumbers so that we can make lots of pickles. These will make great gifts. Everybody loves something homemade goods. That's one of my, I wouldn't say it's my love language. I like giving the gifts and food to people. Someone's having surgery, go take them something to eat, or keeping my son's teachers well fed. That makes them happy because not everybody has that kind of time to make homemade goodies. So you can see here, and this is actually a recycled or previously used jar, but it's perfect. So these are going to be ready. You're going to leave about a ½ inch of head space, so you don't want to pack it all the way to the top. So we want to leave a little space, and even when we pour the brine in, we want to leave a little space so that it has a little bit of air up top. So I'm going to finish doing the jars, and we'll see how many quarts and pints that I have. Okay, that took me about 5 minutes, and I have packed the prepared cucumbers into, it fit in 5 pint jars. So 2½ pounds of cucumbers yielded about 5 pints of pickles. And from where I drained the mixture, I'm actually going to put these seasonings, spices back in the jar. You don't have to do that, but if I put them back in there, we're going to get more flavor out as they sit in the refrigerator, and this is what makes sweet pickles so good. Of course, it's the sweetness, but all the spices that go in them. So I'm going to place them back in my 5-quart jars. And I have about 5 more minutes for my brine to cook, and I'm just going to add that little bit of liquid back to my pot. So I have about 5 more minutes for my brine to simmer. Okay. Now for the fun part, pouring the brine into our prepared jars of pickles. So I've got a ladle, so this is nice and hot, and I'm going to use my ladle. Now you could use a funnel, I suppose, but I'm just going to use a ladle, and I'm going to pour the mixture. Remember, it was vinegar, honey, stevia, pickling spices, and a little sugar. And I'm going to pour this over my pickles, leaving that same little 1/2 inch gap, air gap on the top. And don't worry if you make a little bit of mess. Of course, you don't want to waste your pickling solution, but we're going to go back after this and wipe off the rims so that we get a good seal in our jars. So I'm a little nervous that I'm going to have enough pickling solution, but I think I will. We'll get to this just in case I spill. If you want to wear gloves to be safe, but I'm being really careful not to burn myself. So if we don't have enough liquid, next time I'll just increase the vinegar. And I think I'm going to need a little bit more vinegar for my 5th jar. We'll see. Okay, it's going to be close. Okay, so we got one more jar. Okay, so let's just pour the rest of this in. So it's not quite full, so what that means is we're not going to have enough pickling solution for the 5th pint, so I'm still going to can it, but I'll eat this batch first. So not a big deal. I'll modify the recipe, the final recipe, to be more vinegar and more pickling spice so that you'll have enough brine. So don't worry, I'm not fretting. It's not a big deal. Okay, so now that all of our brine, our pickles have the brine on top, now we need to clean the jars off, and I'm just going to take this pot of boiling water that I have to can the pickles, and I'm just going to dampen a rag, and I'm going to clean these off. I'm just going to wipe the rim. You just want it to be clean so that you get a good seal on your lids. And I've also got some hot water in a pot, smaller pot, and what we're going to do here is use it for our rings and our lids, because of course remember you want those to be nice and hot so that the rubber seal will melt and give your pickles a good seal. And so I'm just wiping and cleaning so there's no pickling solution. We'll get one more. So we've got 2.5 pints of sweet pickles, low-carb sweet pickles. And remember, even though I used honey for the solution, because we have honeybees, if you want to make them even lower carb, use any of your favorite sugar substitutes. I'm sure you could use coconut sugar, you can use xylitol, you could use anything. You just want to taste the sweetness and, you know, modify it and adjust it to your own liking. Okay, so I have a small pot of hot water here, and that's going to be for my rings and lids. So I'm using some tongs, and I'm just going to place my lids and rings like you would normal canning. So if you've done a lot of canning before, just follow your same steps and procedures that you always would. We just want to get these lids and rings hot and melt the rubber around the ring so that when we place them on our pickles, everything seals, and these can keep up for a couple of years. Now, of course, they're not going to last a couple of years because I love to eat them, but this is for long-term food preservation. So that's when we want to, like I said, place them in the water, let them get hot, and we're almost done. So I'm already excited to report back in a week to how they taste. So we're going to put the lids on. I'm going to submerge them in the hot water here for 10 minutes. Remove the pan from the heat, the pot from the heat, and let them stay there an extra 5 minutes, and then bring them to room temperature, and then we'll put them in the refrigerator. And I guess you could eat them in 24 hours, but let's wait a week, let all the flavors get into the pickles, and we'll see how they taste. Okay, so I'm going to start. And these are hot. So a good idea is to get you a rag and just help seal the jars. And I'm going to place them all in at the same time. So I'm just going to put the rings on and the lids. Make sure you use something, because these are going to be very hot. And you want to get a good seal. Make sure it's on really tight. So we made 5 quarts out of 2.5 pounds of pickles. So the next time I make these, I will make more, but I just wanted to do a test round and make them in the smaller batch. Remember, it makes it a little easier. You're able to put things in the refrigerator and find containers easier. But making bigger batches, of course, you won't have to make them so often. And let me know, when you make these, what types of sweeteners did you use? You could use sugar if you wanted to. You just use whatever you want, but these are lower carb sweet pickles. And I can't wait to have them in some egg salad, chicken salad. Honestly, I love them just out of the jar. It just makes me happy. That sweet, that tangy, I just love it. Okay, so I've got all 5 jars. I'm going to just take this extra hot water and pour it into my big jar, because we're going to need all this hot liquid, and I'm going to adjust here. Okay, so now we're going to carefully place our jars into, and we want to simmer this heat. We don't want it too high of a heat. You don't want it too much rattling going on, but this is going to help seal can. Let me see if all 5 are going to fit. And they are. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn the heat down, and I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, and I have removed my pot from the heat, and we're going to wait 5 minutes, and then I'm going to remove the jars. Okay, it's been 5 minutes, so I know they make fancy tongs to remove things from the canner, but I'm just going to use these rubber tongs to remove them. And I'm going to let them sit, come to room temperature, and as they come to room temperature, the seals you should hear the cans pop, and that just means that the jars have sealed, and that's what you want. Okay, let's get these out. Oh, I can't wait. Is it a week? Has it been a week yet? These are going to be so good. Okay, so there you have it. We've just put up our first batch of low-carb sweet pickles using the lime method, which makes them so crunchy, and I just can't wait. It'll be about a week. I'll check back and we'll see how they turned out, if they're still crunchy, if my jar is sealed, and I will post the full recipe so that you can make these too. So as soon as these come to room temperature, then I'll transfer them to the refrigerator for the week. Okay, so today has been 3 days since we finished our low-carb sweet pickles, so I'm ready to taste them. I actually misread the recipe, and they're actually ready in 24 hours, but of course the flavor is going to be enhanced more the longer they wait, so let's give them a try. I made 2.5 pounds of pickles, made 5 pints, so I guess you could say a half a pound per pint, and I didn't quite have enough brine or pickling solution for all 5 quarts, but I'm going to modify the recipe to make it work. And they all sealed, except the one that didn't have enough of the pickling solution. So let's try. See, these are all in here much tighter too, so it may have also been operator error. They smell like sweet pickles. Let me get a fork. And I'm so anxious. Oh, they're crispy. Man, they're crunchy. I mean, it's still amazing what the lime does to make them crunchy. My friends, that is sweet pickles. Did you hear the crunch? They're sweet, they're tangy, they're crunchy. I'm gonna say that this has been a very successful recipe, and I'm gonna make next time I'm gonna make a little bigger batch so that I'll have more to eat, and we'll definitely plan on planting some cucumbers in our garden next spring, because man, I'm impressed. If you love sweet pickles but you don't want all the sugar, try this recipe. It's delicious. They're gonna remind you of the sweet pickles that Grandma used to make, and there's just something about food memories as a child. You know, my dad has passed away and my mother-in-law passed away, and those are the two people that I remember making sweet pickles. So every time I eat these, I think of them, and that's just special to me. So I wanted to make them a little healthier, a little less sugar, and I was successful, and I think these are great. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Down there, click on the subscribe button, and please let me know what other kind of recipes that you would like me to do. What other childhood recipes need a makeover to fit your lifestyle, healthier lifestyle? I'd love to help. So good.